Welcome to Guest of the Year. I'm the host. My name's Mike. This week's setlist curator is Knob. Knob co-hosts the Grateful Dead podcast Help on the Way, which recently had Betty Cantor-Jackson sit in. And earlier this year, I had the pleasure of joining as well. Each week, Knob and co-host Fig and Game choose a Dead show at random and break it down song by song with passion and acuity. Knob also moderates setlist threads on the Grateful Dead subreddit. Help on the Way pod is linked in the show notes. Welcome, Knob.
Thank you. It's nice to be here. That's one of the nice... I've never heard like smart words be used to describe our show. We always call it like Mystery Science Theater 3000 for Deadheads, and we kind of treat it with that level. So it's nice to just hear the word acuity in the same sentence.
Well, it's definitely fitting, I promise. Once again, this week's prize pack is provided by Relix, which just introduced apparel and stickers like no other. The Tapers Section Collection. Dive into the nostalgia of legendary venues through Relix's exclusive designs of bootleg cassette tapes. From the Fillmore East to Red Rocks, the iconic Barton Hall, and the historic festivals like Summer Jam 73 and Woodstock 69, each design is a testament to the unforgettable performances that have shaped our musical landscape. You can go to relixmarketplace.com to own a tangible slice of music history with Relix's uniquely crafted apparel and sticker collection featuring all of your favorite bootleg cassettes. Supplies is limited, so check it out before it's gone. All right, here's how the game works. We'll play the first part of a Grateful Dead live track, and each contestant will use the messaging system to silently guess which year their performance is from. Contestants, who are all on a video conference together, can message in their guesses at any time during the clip or in the 10 seconds after it concludes. Whoever is furthest from the correct year is eliminated. The last two Deadheads standing will hear 3 tracks, and whoever is closest to the correct years in aggregate wins. We've got our returning champ Sean here with us, fresh off his perfect game, and we'll meet the rest of the Deadheads in a moment, but first, without further ado, the Grateful Dead. It was playing in the band at Red Rocks in Morrison, Colorado on July 27th, 1982. Knob, cool pick. Tell us about it.
Sure. A lot of my plugs are going to be directed to the Help on the Way podcast. This show was the most recent show that we featured. What interested me most is that little scatting section in the middle where Brent and Bob start passing off, going like, playing in the band. Because I've never heard them do that mid-jam like that. And I looked it up on the archive. They've done it twice. This was the second of 2 times. The other one was about 8 months earlier. It's just cool, and I've never heard of playing in the band like it, and it's part of what I find fun about our randomizer project.
What was the consensus between, the 3 of you about that show?
We liked this show. This was a well-regarded show. This whole second set is a big playing in the band sandwich. And there's like a nice terrapin in the middle. There's a really cool other one. It had a really great flow in the second set. And then the first set was just consistently strong. It's a really good show. The only real knock against it is that there's not a strong tape of it, but this Matrix from Sir Mick sounds pretty good.
Awesome pick, Knob. Only one person got it exactly, and that is John. John is 49 from Far Hills, New Jersey. Nice poll, John. How'd you suss out 82?
Thank you. Well, it was tough. now obviously never heard anything like that, but I was listening hard for Brent's keys because I have a pretty good sense of the different keyboard sounds from him over the years. And 82 is this odd year where he had a different keyboard unit in 82, which I learned recently while researching, in preparation for this. The early 80s has that plinky Rhodes sound, right, that everyone talks about. And then there's that really definitive sound of the mid 80s. But in 82, he had this certain Yamaha keyboard. It sounds a lot like a piano, or like a lot more like a piano. So as soon as I heard that finally towards the end of that clip, I felt pretty good about 82. I also thought, like, I do have some tapes from 82 where Bobby just does a lot of weird shit, like a Lost Sailor where he's talking about my precious and like weird stuff. And this felt like it was kind of in that vein of just weird Bobby exploration.
That's a really nice clue that Bob was doing crazy shit in 82. Way to go, John. Henry and David were both 2 years off. Henry guessed 80 and David guessed 84. Sean, our returning champ, is odd man out at 85. Henry is 18 from Indiana. Welcome to the show, Henry. Why'd you guess 80?
I mean, this is probably what everybody says, but 82 is my first guess. If I'm going to listen to 80s, I'm mostly a late 80s guy, and I feel like that has a very, very distinct sound compared to like the other 80s shows. And specifically Jerry, like Tiger didn't sound like Tiger really there. Like it kind of sounded like the Travis Bean still. And Brent sounded young, pretty young, enough to where I thought it could be like his first full year. But yeah, of course, 82 is my first guess, and I'm like, well, maybe it's 80. And then so, you know,
Hey, it worked out. Way to go, Henry. You're on to the next round. Along with David. David is 37 from Vienna, Maine. David, tell us about 84.
Yeah, I knew it wasn't 79 to 81 based on Brent's key sound, which is what I'm really honing in on, the 80s stuff. Bobby sounded, he always sounds great, but he sounded fresh and young. Something about the energy and just the vibe from 82 to 83, 84. Jerry still sounded fresh and good. I didn't actually think it was 84. I thought it was somewhere between 82 and 86. So I was playing the game a little bit, trying to make sure I was in the middle. Yeah, I'm feeling pretty good to be moving on with the perfect game for defending champion here. So yeah.
Yeah, nice work. And the perfect game last week was thrown proverbially by Sean, who is 37 from Hartford, Connecticut. Sean misses at Guess the Year for the first time, and it costs him. Tell us about 85.
85 came to mind because first I was just thinking it was the 20th anniversary of the band. They were kind of doing some weird and interesting stuff, and I've never heard that version before. And the way that Bob was scatting it, I don't know, just the sound kind of had a mid 80s thing. Funny enough, I was kind of listening to some early 82 in preparation for the show. And I was listening to 82, and actually while listening to this clip, it had that Alpine 1982 sound, but I just wasn't sold. But I guess I should have just went with my gut.
So you mentioned last week that you played the drums in the musical $1 Million Quartet. So is that a pretty different approach than your jam band drumming?
Well, actually, there is a little bit similarities. Is that as much as it has to be the same thing every time, there's always a little bit of nuance where like maybe the song could be a little bit faster, or it could be a little bit more slower, and you just kind of go with it. And I feel like that's kind of what the Dead did. And that's why I love to listen to so many versions from a tour or whatever, because there are little nuances, and I'm like, wow, this version's really tight. And that's like really why I play music, is because it's always different. But those versions and those nights on tour that I had this past year, there would be nights that stand out because the band was just on, just like the Grateful Dead. Like there's just, nights they're just completely it's unstoppable, and then they have their off nights. It's very similar, but I wish there was a little bit more freedom in terms of openness. But it's all right. I like it to be pretty solid. It's just it's a well oiled rig.
Do you have to act as you drum?
Not really.
Okay.
No, you're just a musician. That's it.
Okay. But
You just do what musicians do.
but you're a character on stage, right?
A little bit, yeah. Just a session like I might say one thing, or I might, just something small. But I was just playing the music. And that's, a lot of like the Grateful Dead, that's kind of how their music is, the Chuck Berry and the, I don't know if they did some Jerry Lee Lewis, but probably. It's all intertwined, rock and roll.
Super cool, Sean. Thank you so much for coming on.
Thank you so much, everybody.
Henry, David, and John are on to the next round, and Knob has another killer pick.
While you're away, I'm gonna fuck with your head house. Just be a
The guesses are in Little Red Rooster at Nassau and Uniondale, New York on March 30th, 1990. Knob.
Yeah, I mean, on the Help on the Way podcast, we're Brent heads through and through. I'm a second generation Deadhead. I got into this music through my dad, who started seeing him in '85 through the end, but especially has a love of the Brent years that has very much come through to me. I am a little picky about Little Red Rooster. I'm not anti, but there's a lot of versions where Bob's slide solo gets a little too above the fretboard, and you're like, okay, I don't know if I want to be hearing this right now. But when it's good, it's good. I have what we call my little pantheon of Red Roosters, of versions that are really good. It started with New Year's '87. And then slowly I just started hearing more versions that I was like, all right, that's a really good Little Red Rooster. And that's a really good Little Red Rooster. This is the most recent one that I've heard that made me go, shit, that makes the list. This is the night after Branford Marsalis joined them in on saxophone. And I was listening to that show on the anniversary a few days ago. And then I heard this the other day and I was like, whoa, where is this Red Rooster bit?
Do you feel like Little Red Rooster performances have to overcome Little Red Rooster, the song?
No, I don't think Little Red Rooster as a song is bad. It's just not my favorite 12-bar blues for the Dead to do. Sam Cooke has an incredible rendition of Little Red Rooster with a young, I'm going to be annoyed at myself for forgetting this, Billy Preston, a really young Billy Preston on the organ. It's a good song. It's just not, it's a little too slow of a 12-bar blues for the Dead to wow as much. I find myself wishing for a C.C. Ryder or one of the others. But when a Little Red Rooster is good, you understand all of the okay Little Red Roosters, why they keep trying.
Is there a common thread between all those really good ones?
I mean, it lives and dies by the solos to me, and especially how the band underscores those solos. You can do as fine a solo as you can play, but if the band behind you sounds a little bit bored, a little bit uninspired, you're not going to make the magic happen. But the best Roosters, in my opinion, not only have killer Jerry solos, killer Brent solos, and passable Bobby slide solos, but they also have the whole band just firing on all cylinders. Whenever they can do those high energy hits towards the end, you've got yourself a good Red Rooster.
Great answer, Knob. Henry got it exactly, 1990. Really well done, Henry. How did you figure out it was 90?
Well, actually, how Knob was saying that it was recently the anniversary of the Branford show. I listened to both of those recently, and I was like, wait, I know this one.
Awesome. John guessed 89. So he's on to the finals as well because David guessed 84. John, only 1 year south. Why 89?
First of all, I'm a massive Brent fan, knob like you. And you know what? I had two fears coming on this show. One was I was going to get knocked out in the first round. And the second one was that I was going to miss a show that I was actually at. And this is that. I missed the Brantford night the night before, but I was at the 28th and I was at this one. And anyway, I was at a bunch of shows that spring 90, and I knew Brent was way into the scat solo at that point. But you know, a couple episodes ago, I heard you play a Little Red Rooster with some Brent scatting that was considerably earlier, and I thought, oh shit, I didn't know that was happening that early. So my first thought was 90, but then I thought, well, maybe it's a little earlier. Definitely had that big late 80s sound, so I thought it probably wasn't earlier than 88, but I was just kind of trying to play the game instead of following my gut. It was the error of so many.
So when you go to the show and Branford Marsalis had been on the night before, are you kind of chattering with the other people in the crowd, expecting him to turn up again? And when he doesn't, were you like kind of bummed a little bit?
That's a good question, and I wish I could say I had a crystal clear memory of all of that. I suspect, knowing me and my friends, I suspect we were chattering a lot about it, and yeah, bummed relatively. Like, it's always a great time if you're at a show, so maybe slightly disappointed. But those were that. I overall, I feel just incredibly fortunate to have seen that so many shows that spring because it was just so hot, and you knew it at the time. It was like, wow, this is sort of a renaissance.
John, nice pull. You're on to the next round. David, 84.
Yeah, 80s not my strong suit. Just like John, I had two fears. Number one was losing in the first round. Got through that. Number two was that it was going to be a steady roll of 80s Brent songs where he's on the Hammond B3 because I can narrow it down if he's on anything, but he played that Hammond from the time he got in till 90. So I couldn't narrow in much. I should have picked up on the bigger sound. Definitely the drum sound was pretty giant. I knew if it was Brent songs from on the B3, it was going to be tough. But I'm glad I made it through the first round at least.
Yeah, that's a tough one. How did you get into the Dead?
Well, I never saw any shows. Naturally, I didn't have the privilege to have one of the shows that I went to come up on this show. Just been a huge music fan my whole life. I grew up, from the time I was 4, listening to rock and roll. Classic rock radio was always on in my house. I remember, as a kid playing a similar game with my mom where we'd, try to guess the song as it came on the radio, and I could start beating her about the time I was like 8 or 9 years old. Always been big into Beatles, Zeppelin, Stones, that stuff. Had American Beauty and Working Man's, loved those albums and listened to some Dead, but never really clicked with me until about 5 years ago with the, getting into re-listening the archives and everything and getting into all the live shows. And, as a musician that we started playing some more of their songs, and it really has, I got dug into it, really got dug in about 5 years ago and realized, this is something even a little more different than just liking a band, like loving the Dead. There's so much there, all the shows that are there, all the stories. There's maybe 2 bands that you could play this particular game with. And I love that about it. I like statistics and, what date they played, where, how many times they played this song. It's kind of like almost like following a baseball team really with the Dead. There's just so much information to take in, and I'm still very, very early in my Deaddom journey. But yeah, they're my favorite band now. I listen to them. I listen to a ton of music, but I listen to probably half Grateful Dead. Should have been about 100% Grateful Dead to compete with some of the people that have been on this show this season. You got some real pros in here, but yeah, just happy to be on the show, man, and gonna keep listening to the Grateful Dead every day till the day I die, I think.
I see an upright bass behind you. Is that your instrument in the band? And what is your band?
Yeah, my band Invite the Wild. We play bars and clubs and outdoor festivals and stuff. So we do quite a bit of covers. We also do a lot of original stuff. I've got a new album all mixed, mastered, and ready to come out June 15th, I believe. 15th, yeah. I mainly play electric bass. Sometimes when we do without a drummer or we do acoustic duo trio, like we can do any lineup of the band, I play the upright. Definitely don't practice it as much as I should. It's a lot harder instrument to play. So when I have upright gigs coming up, I have to bone up, but electric bass is my main instrument.
Do you try to style your playing after Phil?
No, he is probably, he's on my Mount Rushmore bass players. I absolutely love him. I think he's somehow underrated, even though everybody knows who he is. I think he's so far ahead of his time tonally, and what he could get, the live recording sound he could get in 1972 is better than anybody can get right now, with so much less equipment. I love his tone. I love his playing, but he's one of one. He's the only one out there. I can cop styles of, a lot of other rock and roll bass players, but not Phil. I don't even try. I don't even go there with Phil. And I take so much inspiration from him, and in his attitude and his fearlessness and how he plays, but I don't try to sound like him at all.
Do you pick or finger pick?
Mostly finger. I wish I could play with a pick as well as Phil. When I first started playing, it was like picks are for guitar players, and I believed that crap because I was fresh into playing. I love playing fingerstyle. I love having the bass in my fingers and what I can do playing fingerstyle. I do play a little bit of pick, but I'm definitely not as competent at it. And that's a huge part of Phil's attack and sound.
That's awesome. I really appreciate you coming on. And do you want to pull? Yeah, where can people check out your new album? Where's the band, social media wise?
Yeah, so we're on Facebook and Instagram, on social media. Invite the Wild. There's right now nobody else with that band name, so we're the one. If you find it, we're on Spotify, YouTube, all the streaming platforms. We've got two all original albums on there right now, and the third one coming out mid-June. It's not the Grateful Dead, but we do jam. It's if you like the Grateful Dead, I could see you definitely liking our band as well.
Right on. I'll put those links in the show notes.
All right, right on, man.
John and Henry are on to the finals. They're going to hear 3 tracks of Knobs choosing, and whoever is closest in aggregate over the 3 tracks wins the Relix prize pack. Again, they're awesome Tapers shirts, a lot of classic shows, and you have these awesome J cards. It's a really, really cool thing worth checking out. And that also is in link in the show notes. So thank you, Relix. All right, let's hear Knobs' first selection of the finals. Birdsong at Santa Cruz County Fairgrounds in Watsonville, California on September 24th, 1983. Knob.
Yeah, this is another one that we had featured on the Help on the Way podcast, where you can listen anywhere podcasts are available except for Spotify. Um, and it's just got a really cool jam in the middle of it. This is just a bird song that I discovered through this random podcast project. And I've just been a little evangelical about it ever since. That jam in the middle gets really intense in a way that it's just heavy in a way that bird songs often aren't. And I love that contrast to it.
Do you subscribe to Birdsong being the dark star of the 80s?
Honestly, if there is one, it might be playing in the band before I say Birdsong, but it's because Birdsong's got that dreaminess, but it very rarely reaches that dissonant, crunchy, intense, whatever word you want to call it. It very rarely does. And I know I'm making a weird argument while playing a clip of a Birdsong that does. But I find that you often get that freedom, that intensity, that dark star quality in those later playing in the band jams.
Knob, you've already told us how you got into the Dead, and I want to force people to go back and listen to episode 6 to hear your full Deadhead origin story. But I do want to ask you, Help on the Way is kind of the official podcast of the Grateful Dead subreddit, of which you are one of the leaders. And I'm wondering how you rose to that position and like what you make of that community.
Sure. I hope I don't get in trouble for being referred to as a leader.
You are.
I'm around.
It's a venerated position.
Yeah. I know how high on the ladder I actually am. And I just want it to be known that I know. Anyway, I got involved through doing Dead-related stuff through those setlist threads. I was initially participating, and then kind of quickly, there were just a few shows when I first started listening where nobody posted a thread, even though the show had started. And I was like, maybe I'll do one. And I got to do a couple that summer, did a few again that fall tour with Dead & Co. And then the pandemic hit, and that was really the big turning point for me personally. Not to get too heavy, but we were in the pandemic of it all. And the Grateful Dead, as well as Dead & Company, were doing those weekly streams, the Shakedown streams and the One More Saturday Night streams. And it was just a good way to know what day it was and to get to talk to a bunch of people every week about these shows that were happening. It very much kind of kept my head on my shoulders during a time where it was so easy to lose that. And then shows started coming back in person. And at that point, I had been doing all the pandemic setlist threads so much that I was just in charge of that side of things. And through that, I was asked to participate in other stuff. And I'm still around. I mostly have mod power so that I myself can sticky the thread, so I don't have to bug someone else and go, hey, can you please sticky the thread for me? It's me again. It's me from yesterday. Can you do the thing, please?
How would you explain the Grateful Dead subreddit to someone who's a Grateful Dead fan, but is not really on the internet?
Do you want to meet the most miserable group of people filled with really funny inside jokes? But that's just Reddit as a whole. No, the Grateful Dead community on Reddit is fun. I find them to be very welcoming. While being a second generation head, I didn't get as into it until my own adulthood. And so I was still learning a lot of stuff. There's posts of me playing my guitar going, what's this song with this chord progression that's not throwing stones? And everyone else going, it's Althea. But they didn't phrase it like that. They went, it's Althea, which was very nice of them. No, it's a nice bunch of people. It's a very opinionated bunch of people. It's Reddit. But I find it to be a generally kind and welcoming community and knowledgeable community. It is a good group of people that you can say, hey, what's a really good 77 Eyes of the World? And people might get into fights about it in the comments, but they'll both be right. Both of those people will have good Eyes of the Worlds to recommend to you. I hope this doesn't get me in trouble because I like both of these communities, but I found the Dead Reddit community a lot more welcoming than the Fish Reddit community.
Oh, definitely.
And I like both of these
100%.
bands. I've run setlist threads in both of these subreddits, but I tend to like the Dead folks a little more.
There you have it. Going on record.
That's going to be on the record now. Yeah, that's fine. And I stand by every word of that. And I think I should have used the words miserable bastards more.
Awesome. Thank you, Knob. It was a great pick. It was 1983, and both these guys guessed 1983.
Wow.
Henry, we'll start with you. How did you figure that one out?
Well, I had been not super recently, but I listened to the In and Out of the Garden box with the MSG like 83 shows, and I don't know if it was 83, but it was definitely an 80s bird song. And the keyboard, that keyboard sound was like fresh in my mind. For me, that is like the keyboard sound, the Hammond and like his like later 80s stuff. So it was kind of like it stands out for me to hear that other keyboard, like those other keyboard sounds.
Really nice pull, Henry. And John, 83.
Well, I thought I heard that 83 to 86 Yamaha GS1 that Brent was playing, but it's plinky. Like it's got shades of the early 80s Rhodes and 79. But no, I figured it was probably that. And I was going to try, because 83 to 86, I was going to just kind of go in the middle and play the game. But then some of Brent's phrasing there towards the end really reminded me of the Reckoning version, the pa 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 pa. And I was like, man, I got to go early. I was feeling 80, so I went with my gut, thankfully. It was a great version. Can't wait to listen to that.
John, before we move on to the second song of the finals, how did you get into the Dead?
Well, I was pretty young. I was going to a camp, a Forest Lake camp up in the Adirondacks. Because of this show, and I knew this question was coming, I searched my memory bank a little bit. I think it was the summer after sixth grade. And there were some counselors at this camp, a guy named Fred Shepard among them, who played guitar and played a lot of Dead songs. And I got into playing guitar and the Dead that summer. And the following spring, in seventh grade, went to my first show at the Meadowlands with that Fred Shepard counselor's brother, who was my English teacher, Jake Shepard. So the Shepard brothers probably are the reason I got into the Dead. And also, I have three older sisters. So, coming back from camp, I went to their record collection. There was, Long Strange Trip and a couple of others. Anthem of the Sun, which almost derailed my interest. But just the whole community and the open mindedness of it all, and the way that the music was a little bit hit or miss. Like you're kind of always on the hunt because you'd be able to go see 3 or 4 or 5 shows, and you knew they weren't all going to kill, and you knew there might be even a dud or two in among them. But when they hit, it was like 17,000 people celebrating that these guys had just hit. But the Dead also really opened up a whole life of music and other genres because they're so all encompassing of a variety of American genres. So really, as a result of the Dead, got very into bluegrass, playing bluegrass, and also to this point now where my wife and I put on a bluegrass festival in southern Vermont. So I I credit the Dead with kind of a whole life of music and a pathway of meeting great people and playing and listening to amazing music and having a whole incredibly rich experience along with my partner in life, my wife.
Wow. Can you tell us about the festival?
Sure. So it's called the Green Mountain Bluegrass and Roots Festival. It's the third weekend in August. This year will be our 5th year doing it. We started it before the pandemic, and then we had 2 years off for the pandemic. And it's kind of a mix of sort of classic bluegrass heavyweights, like we've had Sam Bush a couple of times, Peter Rowan, and then a more progressive. In the bluegrass world, there's kind of a couple of tracks, and one is very conservative and like bluegrass is what Bill Monroe made it, and it's going to be this way forever. And one is very progressive and evolving. And so, of course, coming from this background, that's the path we're on. So a lot of the performers we have, it's everything from real roots music to you might even call folk or rock, but we've had all number of great folks here. So this year, like I said, it's our 5th year and it's going great. It's the most wonderful and difficult thing I've ever done in my life. And like I say, my wife does it with me. She does the lion's share of the work. So, but it's just it's also the most rewarding thing we've ever done. And so this year we've got bands like Watch House, the McCurrys, Jerry Douglas, Tim O'Brien, Crooked Still, and like a curveball, Raylan Baxter we threw in there this year to mix it up a little bit.
I'm fascinated by lineup construction of festivals. Are you the one that makes the lineups? Are you together with your wife? Of course, are you two the ones who do it? And when you make them, what factors are you considering? I know obviously there's personal taste, but then there's probably marketability too.
Yeah, I mean, I could talk for hours about this, but my wife and I do it together. So the festival's in August. We kind of like take a breath in September, but not even really. And then from sort of September until January, every morning after our kids get off to school, we sit down and we go back and forth on the lineup. And she has her loves, and I have her pet projects, and I have mine, and her skew maybe a little folkier, mine skew a little jammier, but it's a really wonderful, fun process. And then she's the one that goes out and books the bands, deals with the booking agents. Thankfully, it's a really great job I have to just brainstorm with her. But to answer your question, yeah, like we got to book the band that's going to sell tickets. We got to book the band that we have different buckets, and we want to make sure a lot of the music we're into is tempo wise a little slow. So we got to make sure and balance that with some upbeat stuff. And we like to support up and coming artists. So yeah, there are all these buckets and we're constantly trying to mix and match. But I will say the thing that we sort of prize above all else when we're booking, and the thing that's constantly up top of our mind, is which of these artists like each other and want to play together, because there's nothing better than these guys and gals all getting together and jamming, whether it's on stage, which happens, or late night or wherever. Like that's the magic, which very much goes back to the roots of the Dead that we're talking about. So that's kind of my wife Jill would say 6 degrees of separation for each artist. And that's a big factor for us.
On the day of the festival, do you get to enjoy the music or are you running around?
That's a great question. We're always running around, but one of the things we most wanted to accomplish, especially after the first 3 years, which were kind of grueling, to be honest, like, just never a moment to stop and think, let alone listen. And I'm so happy to say in year 4 last year, we hit an operational level that we were able to sit down and listen to the music a lot and even pick a few tunes late night. So yeah, we definitely try and make that happen, and we're getting there.
That's really, really cool, John. Thanks for sharing that.
Well, thank you for asking.
Well, you guys are both have 0 points going into the second song in the finals. Knob has another pick. Let's hear it. Okay, the guesses are in. It was Dark Star at Family Dog at the Great Highway in San Francisco, which sounds like a place that's suited to have a Dark Star, on August 3rd, 1969. Knob.
If all of these other picks are here to promote the Help on the Way podcast in some roundabout way, this version is here to promote this version of Dark Star. I have loved this Dark Star for a long time. It features saxophone and violin. I have read about this show a lot. It is contentious who those people are. Dead Essays has a really long post breaking down. It's believed to be David Laflamme on violin and Charles Lloyd on saxophone. No one is 100% sure on this. People get very mad about it, and I think that's a lot of fun to watch the discussions happen. But it's just an incredible Dark Star that, with the instrument combination of violin and saxophone thrown into the mix, there is no other Dark Star that sounds like that. Even the later 90s Dark Stars where they start having saxophone players, none of them sound like that.
Well, that song was not to promote Help on the Way, but I will say something I really enjoy and would recommend everyone check out.
It's been a really fun way to dig into this catalog. For those who aren't familiar, and this is mostly for the listeners at home, every week we get a different, totally randomized Grateful Dead show. We have no choice over the matter. It is an entirely randomized thing. Some weeks it's a Primal Dead show. Some weeks it is a 90s show. Next week, just by all accounts, we have 7995, which is the very last Grateful Dead show. It's all over the place. We never know what we're getting going into it. And I have discovered a lot of really cool versions just from shows that I had never heard of, shows that I have overlooked, just shows that even when the shows themselves aren't great, but there's a really strong bird song or something in it. And I'm like, wow, I'm going to take this 92483 bird song with me forever. And I'm going to talk about it on Guest of the Year, whether Mike likes it or not, you know? So yeah, it's been a lot of fun to get to deepen my knowledge just through random chance.
And it's probably got to be just a muscle to strengthen too, because regardless of, I'm sure there's times when you're like, I don't think anything about this Peggy-O, but then you were like, well,
Yes.
I'm going to have to go around the circle and say something about the Peggy-O, so I'm going to listen until I think of something.
Yes, and sometimes just a show doesn't hit you, and you catch yourself saying stuff about a show that is beloved. I remember we had on whatever that Chicago 91 show that they just did for Meetup at the Movies. We had it coincidentally the same week as Meetup at the Movies. I couldn't stand it. I really didn't care for it. I believe I used the words unlistenable on air more than once. And I got a lot of people being like, hey, do you know how to have fun? And I'm like, no, I do. I can turn my brain off and have a good time listening to a Dead show. But like when I am listening with that like critical ear, it's just hard not to think stuff about this music.
It's something we should all just do more, regardless of whether we're going to talk about it on a podcast. Yeah, that was a crazy Dark Star, and Henry got it exactly 69. John guessed 73. So Henry takes a 4-song lead in the finals. Henry, really nice pull, 69.
I was so happy you picked this one because the Dead Essays thing, once I was bored as fuck in my econ class, literally reading Dead Essays. I'm like, no way there's a Dark Star with violin and saxophone. And I pull it up and I could not believe what I was hearing. Like, I immediately texted my one friend, like, dude, you have to fucking listen to this Dark Star. Like, drop whatever you're doing, listen to this fucking Dark Star right now. This is amazing. And I'm so glad you picked this one because like nobody talks about it.
Wow. Listen to a lot of shows. Do well in Guest of the Year. Who would have thought? Nice work, Henry. John, 73.
Yeah. Wow. Good job, Henry. I heard that sax, and it reminded me of that sax in 70. I think it was 73 or so 74, when there was a lot of sax on like Weather Report and stuff. And that's the best I could do. I heard Phil's bass playing, kind of the rhythm section. I couldn't hear two drummers or one. And I heard Phil's bass sounded early to me. I heard that early note, but I thought, I don't know, 73 is the best guess I got with that saxophone, and I didn't hear the violin, I'm ashamed to say. So, great one.
I found the 1 minute long snippet where at no point do you hear Mickey Hart go zhink, zhink as he scrapes the stick down the thing. I kept looking at snippets and I was like, oh, that's a good chunk. Oh, the Mickey makes it too obvious.
Yeah, that would have helped.
All right. Henry, now everyone is quite curious, I'm sure. How did you get into the Dead?
So, the friend I just mentioned, actually, it was like 2021, I think, and he was just really into the Dead. And I was like, I'm wearing a Zappa shirt right now. I was super into Zappa, and he was like my gateway into like non-punk music, basically. And I don't know, I just kind of never thought anything about the Dead he was just telling me about Anthem of the Sun, and I knew that I was into like psych rock and stuff like that, and I decided to listen to their first album so I could like save up, and like because he said it was just completely mind blowing. So I'm like, okay, I'll listen to their first album and then see, and I loved their first album, and I really loved it. And then I heard That's It for the Other One, and I'm like, oh my fucking god, like this is it. This is the like I'd never heard anything like that. And then I heard Love Light on Live Dead, and I was like, okay, this is my favorite band. This is my favorite band in the entire world. And I guess I just haven't looked back since. Then when I saw Dead and Company, Deer Creek 2021, that really cemented it because they played, I mean, the second set was almost Live Dead. And then I got my mom into the Dead. Now we watch like the summer tour streams all the time. We got into Billy Strings together. And so I've made her just as like, she's just as corrupted by the Dead as I am now at this point. And we're going to the Sphere in June, and I'm really excited that we get to experience that together. And also my other friend, like that's how because we were like online friends. We lived not too far from each other, but we both, couldn't drive. And we met at a Dead and Company show. And that was really cool to have like to meet him for the first time at a show.
A lot of these sites get a bad rap, but the fact that you were able to meet a friend online during COVID, where otherwise you're really isolated, and then see a show together once COVID is over is pretty awesome.
Yeah. I'm glad that I found all that stuff when I did, because a lot of people my age got really affected by the pandemic and everything. It's people still are affected by it now, and I'm glad that I found like this whole jam band community when I did, because it's just been great. Because I've definitely had a lot of, I've had definitely a lot of struggles with my mental health. I mean, everybody does, I feel like, but I just had a lot of struggles, and it's just been such a positive thing to have, especially with the advent of like online streaming, because it's like I can watch that show and just hear some great music, and it's like live, and it kind of just takes my mind off it. And being at a show is just a completely cleansing experience for me, and it just like I feel like a new person after I walk out of it. And so I'm just so thankful that I found this community to like, it's really uplifting, and it really has done a lot for me.
Wow. Thank you for sharing all that. I really appreciate it. I always feel weird segueing to like scorekeeping after something beautiful like that. And the score is.
Thank you for telling us about your struggles with your mental health.
But
Here's how you're doing numbers wise.
Yeah. So here's another track.
Falling house, the lighthouse key. Wildflowers seen in a setting stone. May the fall winds roll you safely home. Oh, roll away the dew. Roll away the dew. Roll away the dew. Roll away the dew. You better roll away the dew. Roll away the dew.
The guests are in Franklin's Tower at Knickerbocker Arena in Albany, New York on March 24th, 1991. Knob.
This was a show that we had on the Help on the Way podcast. One of the most pleasant surprises when doing this project is when I see a show, I read the set list, I see the date, I go, I don't think the show is going to be that good. It happens sometimes. It's impulse. I try and move past it as much as possible, but sometimes I'm like, man. This is probably the most pleasantly surprised I've ever been with a show. this is a really strong show, and I did not expect that going into it. And I think it opens with this Help Slip Franklin, and just from the jump, you're like, oh, this is great. It's really strong playing. I thought it would be an interesting challenge because it's a 91 show without Bruce Hornsby, so I thought that would be a fun little extra challenge. Yeah, it's just a great rendition. I really like it.
That is a fun twist there. And Henry, again, got it, 91. John guessed 93. Henry's the new champ of Guess the Year. How did you pull that 91?
This is like the funniest reason I have yet. There's a video of one of the Ruben and Charisas that they did. It's from 91, and somebody commented that Vince sounds like the keyboard just sounds like he won Mario Kart. And I heard the Mario Kart keyboard. I'm like, oh shit. And I was just thinking 91 because I'm not super familiar with the 90s stuff. And I was just thinking, okay, Mario Kart keyboard, that was in 91. This is in 91. It could have been 94 or something like that, and I wouldn't have known. But one thing I kind of did notice too, like Rosebud hadn't changed that much yet. It didn't have like that kind of acoustic sound. And Phil, whatever, like because it's like complete direct, doesn't sound like his bass is like mic'd. It sounds correct. Direct is pretty like bouncy, really bouncy almost. You could really hear it, and that was something that I noticed that like I usually only hear in like later shows.
Really nice, Henry. And Mario Kart keys in 91 for Vince. I'm going to steal that one. John, 93.
Where was Bruce? What happened to Bruce that night?
Can I rehash something that's been bugging me for 2 years? When I was on Guess the Year as a contestant many years ago, and I got out in my round because we had a Foolish Heart from 1989 that I thought was from 1993. Because I listened to it and my first thought was, Jerry sounds terrible. So this is probably 90s, but where's Bruce? Where's Bruce? So I'm sorry it had to be someone else from New Jersey, but I wanted someone else to feel that feeling.
Yeah, you knew me before I even came on the show. That was it. I was listening for Bruce, and I couldn't hear him, and Jerry's voice did sound weary sounding, so I just pushed it a little later. But listen, Henry, kudos, man. It's no shame losing to you. That was some impressive figuring and factoring.
Thank you. It was great to play.
John,
really nice run, and good luck on the festival. We'll plug the hell out of it when it comes up.
Thank you so much. What you're doing here is great. You do such a lovely job of it. You bring people together. All along, I've been listening to you, Mike, and just struck by how gracious you are with all the guests. Somebody be 15 years off and you're like, interesting pull. What were you thinking there?
Thank you. Yeah. Everyone's impressive to me that comes on the show. So really appreciate it though. Thank you.
He's the nicest guy in Grateful Dead podcasting. I always say this.
You must be a close second now.
Yeah. I don't know. Knob, pretty nice. All right. Thanks again to Knob for curating this week's set list. Again, Knob's podcast is Help on the Way. It's amazing. And thanks again to Relix for providing this week's prize pack. Their taper section collection is live. It's really cool. I'm sure a lot of people have checked it out already, so it's brilliant. Again, I really appreciate everyone at Relix for including me in this campaign. Thank you so much for listening. For all the show links, including our YouTube channel, go to guesstheyear.net. And if you want to be a contestant on the show, sponsor the show, or make comments and ask questions, email us at info@guesstheyear.net. Shout out to Dylan for drawing the poster and James and Jack for helping out behind the scenes. Thank you so much for listening. Thanks to our amazing tapers whose recordings made this show possible. Congratulations to our new champ, Henry. And to our other contestants, thanks for playing. And remember, it's all one song anyway.
And I bid you good night. Good night. Good night. And I bid you good night. Good night. Good night.